The views and opinions expressed in the following program are those of the hosts and guests, and not necessarily those of the staff or management of Worldwide Digital Broadcasting Corporation.
Welcome to Consciously Rising. I'm your host, Jeff Renel. I'm here with a very special guest of mine, Brad Olsen. He is an author, award-winning author of 9 different books, including Modern Esoteric and Future Esoteric. And if he looks familiar to you, it's probably because you might have seen him on either Ancient Aliens. You've also been interviewed by CNN, I've seen. And
half a dozen TV shows.
Yes. I was lucky enough to be at the 5D event in Las Vegas over the weekend and got a chance to meet Brad and talk to him. And I was lucky enough for him to say yes to come on to my show. So we hurried up and arranged a special day here for him. Brad, well, why don't you first tell us a little bit about yourself and stuff, because there's so much we can cover about you. So why don't you tell us a little bit about you?
Well, I grew up in Illinois, northwest suburbs of Chicago, went to Illinois State University. As soon as I graduated, I started self-financing my first trip to Europe. And when I was on that trip, I thought I was so cool because I was on the road for 3 months and I'd meet these Australians and New Zealanders who are like, 3 months, mate? We've been on the road for 3 years. So, well, how'd you do it? And so they told me how to do it. You work along the way. And so I had to come back to America, lived in Lake Tahoe. That's when I moved to California, where I still live. And then I lived in Maui for a while, broke up with my girlfriend, and found the great opportunity to move to Japan and teach English. And at that point, I started writing my very first book, which is World Stompers, a global travel manifesto. It's still in print, still helps people plan and execute their own trip around the world. And when I got back to the States 3 years later, I was out of the country for 3 years, had traveled to 40-some countries since then, and have accumulated a wealth of knowledge. Found myself magnetically attracted to sacred places, and I did a 4-book series on sacred places, wrote 3 of them myself, and hired another author to do a 4th. I have a publishing business called CCC Publishing, which I started in 1995, and then the warehouse fizzled out, but not before I started producing a street fair in San Francisco, where I currently live, called the How Weird Street Fair, and it has grown to magnificent proportions and still going real strong.
So how weird is the How Weird Festival? That's what I want to know.
It's weird indeed. It's electronic dance music, so there's 13 stages, there's live musicians, as well as a whole bunch of costumes and free-loving people that just come out. I mean, San Francisco is already a very flamboyant town, and everybody gets dressed up. It's springtime, so it's like Easter and April Fool's Day, you know, that kind of year when people are just happy that it's warming up again after a long winter.
Beautiful. And where is this held at?
This is at 2nd and Howard on Howard, How Weird, in the Soma neighborhood of San Francisco.
Awesome.
So we have to get you out there. Our 19th annual will be on May 6th, 2018.
Okay.
Next year.
That sounds like a great time.
We'll do another interview there.
Yeah. Maybe I'll feel normal in the Weird Festival. That'll be great.
You'll be the only one.
All right. So, you know, I was looking through your books and everything, and, you know, I follow you a little bit. I have through Ancient Aliens and some other stuff as well, too. Looking through all this stuff on what do I interview you about, there's
so
just
much material.
Yes, and I was going crazy over this, just getting overwhelmed. What do I choose from? So I think what would be really awesome is to start from the beginning of the history of Earth in a way, or at least mankind on Earth, because the evidence is starting to show that it really goes back a lot longer than we could even imagine. And I actually saw a study not too long ago, I forget what show it was on, but a scientist is now predicting that it looked like life could have been sustainable on this planet after a billion years. which I thought was pretty amazing, but he was showing all the evidence of that. I forget what program it is. It would be nice to be able to mention it, but I thought that was pretty fascinating on a billion years, and that started to have life at that time. Things, I think, the time thing is kind of skewed from the way we look at it and stuff. So let me turn it over to the expert and what you know. What is your belief on when man first arrived, or your knowledge on that?
Sure. As I was doing my 3-year trip around the world, finding myself attracted to these sacred places, then eventually doing the book series. In the book series of Sacred Places, I realized 3 or 4 or 5 page treatment of each of these sites, use the Great Pyramids for example, not nearly enough space that I could allow for the mysteries of this particular place, and then several others. So modern esoteric does start at the beginning. We start with the antediluvian civilization, and that means high-tech civilizations that once existed on this planet. Around 12,000 years ago, it appears that there was some kind of cataclysm where glaciers around the world melted and the sea level rose about 120 feet, because there are many underwater ruins, which I chronicle in Modern Esoteric, showing civilizations perhaps from Atlantis, perhaps Lemuria, and perhaps even older. You mentioned 1 billion years. I always say in my Giants talk that consider the Earth being a habitable planet for at least several million years. But then again, as you mentioned, we could redate that because everything just keeps getting older and older and older. So when I do my talk on giants, which is called The Forbidden Archaeology of Giants in Our Prehistory, I make the preface at the beginning just to consider this has been a habitable planet for millions of years. So perhaps a human-like, very tall group of extraterrestrials had lived here for a while. Perhaps they had high technology and they were part of the germination process of creating the human genome. And now we're starting to look at evolution in a different way, that evolution still occurs, but perhaps we got a head start by combining a whole bunch of DNA. And we've heard the stories of the Anunnaki or the Nephilim in the Bible. Your previous guest, John Polk, touched on that
Yeah.
You have these ancient beings that were coming here and doing different manipulations and basically using the human race as a slave race. So in Modern Esoteric, we look at the beginnings of humanity in Africa with these very enigmatic gold mines in South Africa, the country of South Africa, the oldest known gold mines and civilizations in the world. My friend Michael Tellinger speaks about this quite a bit, and he turned me on to some of the geographic locations where some of these very ancient cities live, and you can actually still see them on Google Earth.
You know
where to go.
Yeah, I saw a documentary, and I forget who the guy was. He said he was running for president of Africa at that time.
That's him.
But yeah, there was all these special geometrical shaped towns all over the place, all connected, and all in sacred geometry patterns. And then he did test on the energy there, and they all had higher energy than the areas right next to it that didn't have the patterns on there, which was amazing.
And so coincidentally, there's all these ancient gold mines right there. So it appears that gold was the reason why this Anunnaki race came here, who very well could have been some of these giants and could have very well been the progenitors of the human race. And so we're just kind of getting caught up with all this information. Of course, mainstream historians would prefer to just blow off everything Michael Tellinger, all his research, all his findings, all these archaeological sites, just kind of say, well, they don't exist or they're not important. Well, they're very important.
Yeah.
Because from there, then you see the human race does expand out, but there's never been found a missing link for the human race. They always say, well, it's going to be somewhere in between a Neanderthal or a Homo erectus and then Homo sapien, but it's never been found. Why? Because it never will be found, because there's never going to be found, because there isn't one. We just kind of came out as is, but if you look deep into our genome, which I also have a chapter in Modern Esoteric about the DNA mysteries, you'll see that we're an amalgamation of many different species combined, including reptilian. That's right here in the back of our neck. It's the fight or flight mechanism that basically keeps us in a survival mode. And it may also be why we're kind of warlike and get agitated very easily.
Yeah, that's amazing. Yeah, I was checking out the spot there in the DNA, and I saw Greg Braden speaking not too long ago, and he was talking about even chromosome 2, I believe it is, that was manipulated, and scientists can now see that it was actually manipulated and fused together because the telomeres are usually on the outside, and both of those are fused on the inside, which doesn't naturally happen in nature. So I find that fascinating as well. So that just solidifies what you're telling us right now.
And all the data points are starting to come together in this way to suggest that the human race was a product of creation that was superseded with some of the proto-human types, such as Homo erectus. And this is evident in the blood types of all humanity. It's the Rh factor, and that stands for rhesus monkey, an abbreviation Rh. And those who are Rh negative, which includes my family, are devoid of the monkey blood. And that's basically what it is. And what I get into in Modern Esoteric in a chapter called Blood of the Gods is that this is the purest form of blood. My dad, for example, is Rh negative. That means he can give blood to any blood type out there, but he can only get his own blood type or it'll kill him. He had a brother, my Uncle Douglas, who died at 5 days old because his blood was corrupted by my grandmother, who was Rh negative. This happens in no other animal species on the planet except humans. So it does show that we are like multiple species in one. And an example I give in my talk is just a few months ago in the journal Nature, they said, well, the African giraffe is actually 4 different species. But from the naked eye, you wouldn't be able to tell. They all just look like giraffes, just like we look like people. But when you get down to it, there's a lot of subtle differences, and I think the Rh negative blood is like what Greg Braden said. If you look deep into our DNA, if you look deep into the structure of who we really are, you'll see that all is not quite what they would say is this cookie cutter model of us evolving from the apes. It didn't quite happen that way.
Yeah, and I don't want you guys shutting us off thinking, oh, well, they're talking there's no God, but that's definitely not what we're talking
That's
about
not what
either.
we're talking about at all.
No, because there's definitely that higher energy. It's just, this is just part of nature, the way we were manipulated in a way is more what you're saying.
And what I'm saying is also that, too, the survivors of Atlantis could very well be those Rh negative types. And through intermixing, interbreeding, sort of like the blue eye color. Now, I am Rh positive from my mom, but I could very easily have an Rh negative child from my dad. So it's one of those things like the color of our eyes or even our hair color. It kind of is a regressive genes that can go through generations. So if the Atlanteans were of a pure Homo sapien race, and the Rh positives have this mixture of what I call monkey blood, then you can see that we have this mixture of proto-human, advanced human, as well as reptilian, and several other ET types are all within us, which does make us very attuned to other religious type of feelings, or I would say spiritual is a better word, that we're more attuned because we have this thing called the pineal gland, our third eye, which is mostly closed in all of us and is actually being calcified intentionally through fluoride and other means, and we just don't have access to it. If we did, we could become 5-dimensional beings, which means we could be incredibly spiritually attuned.
Okay, so is there any way to gain access of your pineal gland?
Well, there is. There are exercises you could do. Unfortunately, we're not given the training as a child. Just imagine if when we went to primary school, one of the first classes we took was how to astral travel or how to see outside your body, almost in the way that we can dream of other places. What if we were lucid dreaming, cognitively dreaming of traveling outside of our body? And that's one first step that people can do through meditation. You can sometimes find yourself outside of your body. That's a good first step. There's what's called the silver cord that always stays attached. So people that get very good at this then can travel very, very far and start exploring the solar system and even the universe. But then as has been known, remote viewers have been a product of the intelligence agencies for many decades. Russia has them, we have them. One man named Ingo Swann has been a very famous remote viewer. They get into Russian nuclear sites and come back and draw the schematics. Same thing goes with the Russians into our sites. So in a way, the whole idea of spying on your enemy is a bit of a moot point because everybody knows everything at this point.
Yeah.
But it does show, and this is the point, that we do have these abilities to then transcend our body and move forward. And I would say someone like Ingo Swann, who was born with these abilities, must have been a very advanced being and had these abilities from a very young age.
Yeah, and just because you're not, somebody out there might not be tapped into it now, doesn't mean you cannot tap into it, because that's been my experience. I've always believed in it, but I didn't really know how to tap in or anything. But through training through Theta Healing, I've been able to tap in a lot of different senses that I wasn't normally attuned to, and that's it. It's becoming attuned to it. I love what you were just saying about being born and waking up into it, because I have a friend, Adam Diamaran, who works with indigenous tribes and the Kogis, and that is actually one of their practices. When they know there's a Kogi, they'll take it, and the Kogi will actually, now there's an actual house, but back in the day they used to put them inside of a cave with barely enough light, just so they do not go blind, but they kept them in the dark so that way they would see through their third eye and the pineal gland, like you were just talking about, before they saw out of these eyes and let these eyes corrupt what they are actually seeing and feeling. And I always loved that story and what they are about. Amazing people. I got a chance to meet a few of them, and just wonderful energy. But yeah, exactly what you're saying there, and wonderful things. I mean,
this is how we can attune ourselves to working our third eye. I love the practice of being in pitch dark, and you've noticed, if you've ever tried it, you do start to become aware of your surroundings, even though the two eyes aren't there to see for you. We do have the ability to tap into these extra dimensional abilities if we just give ourselves a chance to do it.
Yeah, there's many stories out there of people that are actually blind and been blind from birth that are doing amazing things, even riding bicycles and making clicking noises so they can hear back and ride a bike perfectly. I mean, it's just absolutely amazing. Once you lose a sense, you can pick up more.
Correct.
Or if you choose to, wear a blindfold so you can release that one for a while to start to tap in. But yeah, I think these are important things for us to do to keep moving forward. Let's take a really quick break here, and we'll come right back with Brad. Thank you.
Crazy Terry here with your car care tip of the day. So it's not a bad idea every now and then to check your battery. If you don't know how to do it, have somebody check it for you. Just a visual inspection can tell you a lot about your battery. So as we can see here, this battery's got a hold down. It's nice and tight. The cables are on. They don't look bad. We've got a cover. We don't see any corrosion. Everything's kind of tight, looking good. A little bit of dirt, that's normal, but nothing's leaking, no real cause for alarm here. So that's a good sign. Doesn't mean it's good, but at least visually we know that it's intact. Okay, so we're looking at a battery here that shows signs of corrosion. We want to test that battery to make sure it's good. Usually when they're getting like this, there's going to be a problem, leaking some acid at the top. We ran the test and we find out it has 396 cold cranking amps, but the battery requires 650. So it's just not enough. The battery is going to go soon. Better to know now than later. Okay, so the benefits of checking the cable is because this cable's rotted out. What we'll find is this is the problem, not the battery. So it'll save you from buying a battery, still having the no start, only to find out that it's a cable. This type of corrosion is common in diesels. Okay, so we're getting ready to jump the car, but we have to have some battery cables. And we have to check those too before we hook them up to the battery. So here we have our standard set of battery cables. We just look them over, see if the ends are frayed, if everything's connected all right. Everything looks good here. Wouldn't hurt to check the rest of the cable just to make sure the dog didn't get it and chew it up. We have red and black. Red's positive, black's negative. You always want to hook the positive up first and then the negative. And I'll show you how that's done right now. Keep these off to the side so they're not touching each other. Hook up your positive. You can find that right here by the plus sign, the negative sign. Plus is positive, red. Make sure that's securely hooked up. Keeping these away from each other. Hook up your negative cable. Just got to fight it on there. Figure out a way to get it. Wiggle it a little bit so it ensures a good connection. Now you're transferring voltage. If I hit these two together, we're going to spark. Kind of want to avoid that. Won't kill you. Kind of fun. A lot of people think if they can turn the headlights on, the battery's fine. That's not always the case. It takes very little amperage to turn a light on, but it takes a lot of amperage to start the starter. I recommend checking the charging system every oil change. At Sun Valley Automotive, there's never a charge for that. This is Crazy Terry with your car care tip of the day.
Welcome back to Consciously Rising. I'm here with Brad Olson, and we've been talking about his books, Modern Esoterics and Future Esoterics. We've been mainly covering the modern one right now and starting with the beginning and talking about how we've come about on this planet and how we've been evolved through maybe extraterrestrial manipulation and different things like this, and how technology now is really opening us up to a whole new world on our past. So let's start to get into your new book and talk a little bit about this really quick.
Sure.
And what's in that?
So Future Esoteric, subtitle is The Unseen Realms. That's a term that esotericists have used for many years. And I guess I should give you a quick definition of what esoteric means. It means the subjects that are known to only a select few.
Okay.
When they become widely known, then the word changes to exoteric. So using this word esoteric means people who had sought out this information, had been in the mystery schools of old, and then in more of the secret societies of more modern times. These are groups of people, such as Freemasonry, that collect information and just share it amongst themselves. So I've gone about getting all of the subjects that have been withheld from humanity and have now put them into these two books with a third on the way. And I never repeat my material and find that there's so much to go on, so many hidden subjects. And by the way, the word occult merely means hidden. And some of this goes into the dark side, but some of it is also on the lighter side, such as releasing free energy technology. And you mentioned technology, that would be a good place to start, because we could do so many things with free energy, such as desalinization plants to water the deserts, clean up the oceans, get rid of pollution, and so many other things to restore planet Earth as the garden planet that it's always been.
And we have a lot of these technologies right now at this moment that, again, is being hidden from us, that we can make huge changes. So let's kind of get into the technology and why is it being hidden from us, what actually is going on behind the scenes, because as we were both discussing a minute ago, not on the show, but when we were on commercial break, about World War II and a lot of these other wars that are just basically smoke screens for other things going on behind the scenes. And I'm from what I've seen, World War II definitely wasn't about fighting over land or anything like that, or who's right and wrong. It was something that was fought over technology and past technology that they were searching for in many ways. And I still believe that a lot of the wars in Iraq and all of this is the exact same thing. You know, we sit there and I find it so disheartening watching ISIS destroy all these temples in the Sumerians' information and stuff like that, and losing a lot of our history. What is your input on a lot of this, and what do you see?
If we can just back it up a little bit further to the time of Nikola Tesla, he created a world system where he was going to give away free energy to the world wirelessly. And he built this tower called the Wardenclyffe Tower on Long Island, and he had started doing his preliminary experiments in his other laboratory in Colorado Springs, and he was actually able to wirelessly deliver electricity to Colorado Springs successfully. Think about that 100 years ago, how advanced that would be. Why don't we just start where he left off and reintroduce these technologies?
Do you mind if I mention something really quick? Because yesterday at the conference, you know Larry Hunter.
Yeah.
He shared something with me that was absolutely amazing. And, you know, is it guaranteed that? I don't know. But they had pictures of hieroglyphs of Egyptians holding it in their hand, but an actual small light bulb. We will try to post a picture on it if we can so you can get a look on it. But was basically looked just like a light bulb that we would put in a socket, but the bottom part was made out of a clay and some other material in the center of it, and it looked like the way he explained it. And I have to agree too, because something's amiss there, because you can't use torchlight to light the pyramids and stuff, because one, it won't stay lit. There'd be soot all over the beautiful paintings and stuff. So they had to light it somehow, and they definitely didn't shooting mirrors down the hallway. That wouldn't have worked either. So exactly what you're saying, they could have been using back then too.
Correct. And we're still at an impasse to even explain how the Great Pyramid itself was built, let alone their technique for illumination, as you mentioned, because there is no soot all over the beautiful hieroglyphics and the inside of the Great Pyramid, except if in the modern age people were coming in with torches. So there was very high technology in Egypt we're still yet to understand. But then you fast forward to 100 years ago, what Tesla was doing, and when he was about to roll out the Wardenclyffe Tower, which could have wirelessly electrified planes flying over the Atlantic. You don't even need to refuel, to the entire East Coast getting electricity wirelessly and free. His financier, J.P. Morgan, came to see and get a demo. He says, okay, Tesla, where's the switch? Where's the meter? We need to tap into how we're going to charge for this. And Tesla said, well, sir, there is no meter. We're just going to give it away. And needless to say, they squashed him like a bug and pulled the financing, and one of the greatest crimes in history. And look, you go out and you'll still see a bank for J.P. Morgan, but Tesla's been virtually written out of the history books.
Yeah, and he's probably profiting from all of his technology as well too.
He did.
And the other thing that's missing as well too, that you guys mentioned on the panel last night, is that death ray that he had as well too. That's disappeared.
Well, that went into the black projects, and it's not to say it disappeared. It could very well be there.
Well, it disappeared
and having
to us.
applications. Yeah, but they don't talk about that either. And part of the reason, and you did mention the Nazis, we have to understand that at the end of World War II, the country Germany surrendered. The Third Reich has never surrendered. They went underground, and the money man, Martin Bormann, who was Hitler's number 2 in 1945, had control of all the wealth of the Third Reich, including many tons of gold, many priceless pieces of artwork, and a whole lot of assets and resources that they could then invest into corporations. Why do you think it is that Germany today is the wealthiest of the Western countries with no external debt? Why do you think it is that they basically run the EU? So they went underground to control the European empire. They also went to South America. It's a pretty good chance that Hitler lived out his natural life until the 1960s in Argentina, in a place called Bariloche. And it is a very Germanic stronghold to this day, where many signs are and witnesses say that he was there, and he was seen, as well as Martin Bormann, many times in the 1950s throughout southern South America, as well as the Antarctica connection, because then there's Base 322, or the New Berlin base, and that may be where all the high-tech flying saucer craft of the Third Reich went to. They had submarines that could carry cargo, much in the same way that we have cargo trains and trucks right now. They could get those craft out of the Skoda works in Czech Republic and bring them down before the war ended. And then with the financing of Martin Bormann and the paperclip Nazis that came here to the U.S., who started NASA with Wernher von Braun and Hermann Oberich, who said, both of them in different ways, how did you get this technology to create craft? And they would say, we had help from above. Then you have people who started the CIA, like Reinhard Gehlen, who should have been at the Nuremberg trials and probably sentenced to life or death because of the crimes that he committed. No, he came here and became the attaché to Eastern Europe, spying for us, but really he was spying for the Fourth Reich, which just had to go underground. And then you also have the psychiatrists that came over here with MK Ultra.
Yeah.
The reason it's spelled MK is mind control. Control with a K is how you spell it in German. And those experiments came here. And that's when I really think we started having problems in this country. We had one honest president who was going to expose this, who was going to be the peace president, who was going to have disclosure about what we know and are doing in the black operations, and he was assassinated 53 years ago. A coup d'etat, and by textbook definition, when you have a coup d'etat, that means the government which follows is illegitimate. So technically, we have been living under an illegitimate government in this country for almost 54 years.
That's amazing, but not surprising.
Kind of explains a lot in the way
Yeah.
things are going and how our rights are being eviscerated and how they're chemtrailing the skies and doing these things right in plain sight, and there's nothing we can do about it.
Yeah.
In fact, it's all legal too.
Yeah.
If you look at the books.
And we were talking about chemtrails yesterday, and I'm born and raised here in Las Vegas. We've had beautiful blue skies my whole entire life. Now all of a sudden in the last 8-10 years, now all of a sudden they're spraying the skies. They spray it every Sunday morning before church, and they're going right across the sun so you can't take a picture of it. But then later on in the day we have this nice little faint cloud covering the whole sky, which has never been there my whole life until just recently. So yes, they say they're not spraying, they're spraying.
Of course they're spraying, and they're not telling what's in the spray. And if you were to listen to your nightly weather report, they're blatantly lying. They'll say, oh, there were high wispy clouds today. No, there weren't. They were sprayed out of an airplane.
Yeah.
I saw it with my own eyes.
Well, matter of fact, I saw that the other day. They said, we're going to have clouds the next day, and I saw them spraying the day before. It was like, oh, is that how we're getting our clouds? But again, we don't want to put fear base out there because, yes, this is happening, but it's part of a beautiful design in a way, too, when you really break it down. We're not going to get into that point right now because you got so much great information here. You mentioned NASA too. I do believe that World War II was a race to retrieve technology, and I also believe that us getting to the moon was the same deal. And it was a race to see who could retrieve the knowledge.
Right. I think if history were to accurately portray the first moon landings, it will be the Third Reich. In the 1930s, they were up there. There is a base on the dark side of the moon. If we're ever to reveal this information, when our guys got up there in '69, they had a code word for it. It was Santa Claus. And when they were coming around the back side of the moon, Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin kept saying, we see Santa Claus. And that would make no sense, beaming that back to Houston. What, the guy with the big beard? No, it was they were seeing the ET bases on the dark side. And perhaps this is the reason why there's not been a concerted effort to get back up there. And they also said when they were landing on the Apollo 9 that there was activity just outside the crater. Here's a great story. I had an opportunity to actually hang out with Buzz Aldrin once at a travel conference. I was just kind of shadowing him. He's a big celebrity. He kept, who's this tall guy following me all the time? Finally, I caught his attention just like you and me. I go, hey, Buzz, I do research in the field of the paranormal and so forth, and I heard that there were orbs that were following you on the return flight to Earth in the capsule, and they may have even come into the module. Is that true? And he gives me the steely-eyed blue eyes. And he wouldn't confirm or deny, but the look he gave me is like, how did you know that? Okay, don't punch me, Buzz. I believe you went to the moon. Because he's punched people out when they confront him. Oh, yeah. They're like, will you swear on this Bible that you stepped on the moon? And he's like, boom!
No way, is that?
Yeah,
I didn't know. I didn't hear that.
Yeah, he's a feisty guy. And of course, he was just down in Antarctica with all these other elites that are going there. What's going on in Antarctica?
Yeah, that's a whole nother subject that I would love to bring you on for that as well too,
we
because
could do a whole show on that.
Yeah, because with the snow melting, there's a lot of other things going on as well too. I want to stay on the moon really quick because the moon is a funny place.
It is.
One, it never rotates, and why is that the only sphere in the sky that doesn't rotate like everything else? And then you look at the craters on the moon, and they're all pretty much the same depth, regardless of the radius of the actual crater. They're all about the same depth. And then, like you were mentioning yesterday when we talked about this, that when the spaceships are landing, that they're actually making
ringing sound.
Yeah, and then they actually did crash one in to see what happened, and it did. It rang like a bell.
For days, for many hours, just reverberated all the way around, suggesting it's hollow.
Yeah,
suggesting it's an artificial satellite that was brought here and put into orbit.
Yeah, and that's where David Wilcox was going with that too, with giants, which you're a specialty in the giants as well too. I know we're getting close to running out of time. I don't know if we want to go into that subject now or.
Sure,
okay. So what is?
Well, that'll bring us all the way back again, and if this was a habitable garden planet, perhaps very wild and woolly, perhaps even contemporary with dinosaurs. When these species were there was a Italian guy named Luigi at the conference at 5D. He was doing the giants of Sardinia, Italy, and he was showing these great big dolmen megalithic sites said built by the giants but used to hide from dinosaurs. That they'd still get mauled by them. They had those big teeth. They could probably even 14-foot giant in their mouths.
Probably a hell of a fight.
Yeah. And so there's much evidence. I do a slideshow with at least 50 slides. It could be 10 times that with all the evidence there is for covering up the fact that massive human-like species had once roamed. Now, some of them have double rows of teeth, and it's known that they used to eat shellfish, perhaps just biting right into an abalone and cracking those massive skulls. I mean, their heads were huge, so you could pretty much fit an abalone right into the mouth of some of those and break them up. Sometimes they had a 6th digit, and of course, with this gigantic size, many times the size of modern humans, clearly not one of us. So, once again, suggesting the ancient astronaut theory has many different ways of verifying that there were visitors here a long time ago.
And the one thing that I'm absolutely loving myself is, growing up, it's like, okay, is the Bible true? Is aliens true? Is all these different things true? But now we're starting to discover that a lot of this was. And, for a while there, I kind of dismissed the stories in the Bible and going, they're just great teaching stories and stuff like that. Now I'm starting to really re-believe in a lot of these stories. And then when we start talking about possibility of giants living here, it changes the story on David Goliath. That now, hey, that possibly can be real. There's another one I can't think of too, but there's plenty of different stories about giants being here in North America. I know even up in the Reno area, I forget the name of the cave now, but there was a famous red giant found in there that now all of a sudden has disappeared. But for a while, I believe it was out in
Spirit Cave and Lovelock Cave.
Yeah, Lovelock. Yeah, exactly.
Been to Lovelock. It's in my book, Sacred Places North America. So as I was traveling across the country, working on this book, I was going to many of the mound sites in the Midwest and the South, and even some out here, and finding they're full of giants, and they were full of giants, and there are headlines, hundreds of headlines of when these earthen mounds were cracked open, mostly in the 19th century, even by teams of archaeologists. But it's like a crime scene today. Who's the highest authority? The FBI comes in. In the case of here, Smithsonian Institution would come in and say, we'll take over this case, archaeologists. You just go fuck off. Oh, maybe I didn't.
No, it's good here. You're good.
And those giants' bones would just get taken away, and you'd never hear the end of it. And even some of these archaeologists would inquire, because they were doing professional digs, and say, where's the artifacts? Where's these bones? We never received any bones. They just completely blow them off. So there is a Smithsonian gate, as we call it, regarding many of these specimens, which were, in some cases, even just dumped into the Atlantic, just to get rid of it, just to sweep it under the rug and be done with it. And that's the cardinal sin of archaeology.
Yeah, I agree. And that's what makes me wonder what's really going on with ISIS and then them destroying all the different ruins and artifacts back there. Makes me wonder.
Kind of harkens back to George Orwell, that the group that controls the present can control the past. And when you control the present, you can then project on the future. So it could be that in decades to come, we can start denying all this stuff. Oh, we never knew it. We never saw those artifacts in the Middle East that got destroyed in our present time, because they're controlling the narrative. And keep in mind, Jeff, it's all about controlling the narrative. The cracks are starting to form. I'm coming up with hundreds of pages of material of what they're trying to hide from us, and it's all starting to come out into the open. The veil has now lifted, and we're starting to see the world for what it really is.
And so let's try to end on a positive note, because of course I don't like to push fear, and I know we're coming close. So how can we do something about it then? Or what do you believe is the future, and what can we do to keep it in a positive aspect?
3 simple words. The revolution is consciousness. 4 simple words. It's all about us awakening. It's all about us attuning. It's all about us becoming a modern human, and the new human, which can have these superhuman abilities. We touched on remote viewing, astral traveling. Perhaps we're all going to be telepathic. Perhaps we're going to learn telekinesis. I should say relearn, because I think these are latent abilities within all of us. All we need to do is train ourselves once again, and we could start being the new human in this lifetime.
Yeah, and that's one reason why I try not to push fear on this show, is because fear is the one thing that I know holds us back and doesn't allow us to be that superhuman that we are, that God that we are, because the creative energy has no fear. So why should we?
We should.
And once we have fear, we strap ourselves down and we hold ourselves back.
We do indeed. And they know that, the controllers know that, because when you have fear and anger, your cognitive abilities start to shut down, and you do not have the ability to reason anymore and look at some of these subjects, which can be very emotionally grabbing, and look at them realistically, look at them practically, and say, things don't quite add up. Not the knee-jerk reaction, this and that. So you're right. If we can transcend fear, we're on the right track of really becoming superhuman once again.
Yeah, and you made a good point there, because we can't overreact when we find out, and that's one of the reasons why I really feel blessed to have you on, and Reverend John Polk on the last episode, is because we need to understand what has been happening, so when all of a sudden the veil does come off, we don't get upset and go, oh my God. And matter of fact, one of the ladies in the panel was even mentioning that yesterday. Maureen St. Germain, I think her name was. Yep. She was even mentioning that, and it's the truth. If all of a sudden the veil's lifted and we see how they, fooled us, I know how I feel when I get fooled. I get upset really quick, but I got to learn to calm down, and we'll have to do that. We'll have to realize that we learn from it, and we learn beautiful lessons from all these negative things, and that's the way we should choose into life anyhow. But yeah, we have to come with the right attitude and realize that it was just part of this learning process that we need to go through to become the beautiful beings that we are too.
Just a final perspective on that. Keep in mind that if we did live in a utopian planet, and I think we'd like to do that, if there was no crime or fear or anger in the world, it'd be kind of a pretty mild, mellow place. I think we're here to learn duality, to struggle in this us and them, good and bad. It's so in your face sometimes. How are you going to handle it?
Yeah.
Are you going to handle it peacefully, which I think you have to? And if you do, I think you're in the right step. You become more service to others rather than all ego, service to self. And that's how we transcend. That's how we make the jump to 5D.
Yeah.
That could be a whole other show too.
No, definitely. And that's why I'm so happy, and I hope I can bring you back on again. And I mean, again, we could have covered so many different things here today with him, and I think we did. But I really wanted to start kind of in the basics to give people out there that aren't familiar with all these different things something to start with and realize. And yes, all this negative things that are happening here, just like you said, I think was part of our divine journey. Yeah. Part of something for all of us to learn to be more of that divine being that we can be in the future. And if we didn't go through this and learn this, we could jump into anger and aggression so easy without knowing this. So how would we then be the creator to create worlds if we don't know how to control our own energy? You can't give the baby the the keys to the car yet. They have to grow into it, and that's exactly what we're doing here. So I do believe that this was all out of a beautiful design, and I think we're into a beautiful place that we're going. So thank you so much for being part of the show. Thank you for staying an extra day here in Vegas and stuff to be here. I do feel honored, and anything you want to plug before you get out? Are you at any other events here coming up?
Well, it's a pleasure to meet you. Yeah, I'll be back in Sedona for the Cosmic Wavelength at the Sedona Community Center, December 9th and 10th. I'll also be back in Sedona again on April 20th, 21, 22, and I'm speaking at Contact in the Desert June 1, 2, 3, now relocated to the Palm Desert. But if people want to learn more about me, you can go to www.bradolsen.com. My book publishing is cccpublishing.com. Follow my videos on the Esoteric series YouTube channel, and I also have a radio show called the Esoteric Circle on Revolution Radio and Late Night in the Midlands, syndicated on 2 internet radio stations.
Awesome. Well, I'll have to tune into that. Thank you so much, man. I feel so
pleasure.
blessed to have this show and have guests like you. Thank you.
You're very attuned to all this, Jeff, and you're a great host.
You know, that's why I did this, because I wanted to learn more. So it's like, let me bring on the guests that I can learn from and keep expanding and help them expand as well, too. So thank you.
You're very welcome.
All right, thank you for tuning in. We'll have another great one for you the next show. Thank you.